Hello everybody, and welcome to another puzzle challenge video with ChessUniversity.com. For today's video, we're looking at a beginner difficulty puzzle. The position before us is white to play and win. White already has achieved a very good position, but there's a tactic, of course, that's the most winning of all possible options. And it was played between the players Park and Tang on Chess.com a couple of months ago in one of the online blitz tournaments, of which there have been many recently. And as we usually do, finding the video, having presented this as the key tactical position, I'm going to walk us through the beginning of the game and see how the game developed up to this point. And I will include my usual note that if you'd like to solve this and get credit for it in terms of reward points on the ChessUniversity.com website, please check out the link in the YouTube description, and you can check out that webpage. That's where you want to post your answer to the puzzle. All right. Without any further delay, let us jump into the game, which began as a symmetrical king's pawn opening. e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4. Two most popular moves here are knight f6 and bishop to c5. In this game, black opts for knight f6. And here, white has a few different options. There's the old gambit. The gambit lines to go like this, or even in this position to castle. The Scotch gambit. There's d3, which takes the game into more of a slow Italian-style territory, especially if black develops the bishop to c5. Often you're going to get positions that look quite a bit like this, and then castles, which you can also get from the Italian move orders. And there's also the very sharp, theoretical, highly computer-analyzed knight g5 lines, which often basically force black into some sort of gambit position after d5 takes. Because if the knight takes d5, there's two moves that are good for white. There's both knight f7, queen f3, which is very dangerous for black, or even better, according to the engines, after knight takes d5, is to immediately play the move d4, protecting this knight. Because after after knight takes d4, there's c3, when both of the knights are hanging, and then black can avoid losing a piece if they play b5, but they still have a very difficult position. And if they take with the pawn, then you just castle as white, and rook's coming to the e-file, knight takes f7 is still an idea, and black is basically busted here. So anyway, there's a lot of different branches at this point, but white goes for the column option with d3, which is pretty practical and honestly quite good, without having to memorize any sharp lines. Bishop c5 played by black, and now castles d6, rook to e1. So far, pretty normal. h6 played by black. Some people might be wondering what happens if black plays the move knight to g4, attacking this pawn on f2. That is an idea that is often played in these positions, and usually white's playing the move rook e2, which, when I first saw this, I thought this looked incredibly strange and artificial, but it's not so bad. There's no way to put additional pressure on f2, so it's not so bad. You can also go back to f1, but that'd be a bit silly. That's just going to be a draw. So usually you'll see people include the move h3 early, but white actually has to be careful in these positions, because if they play h3 too early and black hasn't castled, you got to watch out for black throwing the g-pawn down the board and going for an attack. There's a famous game, Aroni and Kramnik from the candidates, where this sort of thing happened, and it can be very dangerous for white. So rook e1, h6 played by black, c3 by white, preparing the two usual pawn break, well, the pawn break d4, and then the other pawn expansion plan of playing b4, a4, and grabbing some space on the queen side. Okay, so black finally castles. Now a4. There's a very direct threat to trap this bishop now if black is not paying any attention and they just go ahead and play some casual moves. This bishop will actually get trapped, so that's a good idea to know. So that's why a6 is played, preparing a retreat for the bishop so it does not get caught by the pawns. Now h3 is played by white, preventing the knight g4 jump, and also preventing bishop g4. Knight e7. This is a fairly standard idea as well, for this knight to be rerouted towards the king side, where it has potentially stable squares, noting that on the c6 square, the knight's actually very poorly placed, because this pawn on c3 dominates it, basically makes it very difficult for the knight to move forward. And some people might be asking the question, why can't black play a move like knight a5 trying to go after this bishop? Well, for one thing, the bishop can just retreat. Then there's this fork idea that black would have to parry. But even b4 immediately is actually interesting. So there's the main reason is that b4 is going to be annoying, and the secondary reason is that knight a5 doesn't actually catch the bishop. If it does, if knight a5 actually ends up trading this bishop off, then it's usually not such a bad idea. Okay, but black starts rerouting their knight, and they play bishop a7, knight to f1. Both sides are just getting pieces towards the king side. And now bishop e3, which is a pretty calm way to approach this. Just trying to neutralize one of black's more active minor pieces. In this position, it's also possible to play a lot of other moves like knight g3. This idea in mind makes a lot of sense. Bishop b3, just to get out of the way of any d5s, is also logical. And you can also go b4 and try to expand on the queen side. So there's many ways you can play this position. But white played bishop e3 and just simplified a little bit. Took with the knight. Rook e8 was played by black. And now b4 and white's just grabbing space on the queen side. Bishop e6 played. Both sides exchange. This, to me, is a little bit strange. Usually, as black, if you're going to go for this and exchange and take with the f pawn, it kind of makes more sense to have the rook on the soon-to-be half-open f file. It seems slightly inconsistent to play rook e8, bishop e6, and then take with the pawn instead of with the rook, but that's how the game went. So white plays the move queen b3, pinning the pawn. Now goes g3 to cut the knight from g6, so it doesn't have any jumps. King h7 is played, king g2. Now white should be a little bit better here, though it's still, as it usually is, pretty close to equal. Rook a d8, pawn to b5, finally charging forward on the queen side, and a5 trying to keep things closed. Now knight c4, attacking the pawn on a5, b6, and white decides that now is the time to open the position, and they play the move d4, which is the typical break in the center. Pawn takes d5, which is not the right reaction. Now white gets a very strong knight on the e5 square and a good position to go with it. We're getting very close to our key moment. But instead I should say here that black should have tried the move e5, and this would prevent any square for the knight on e5 from the white side. And while it looks like, d5 grabs a lot of space for white, which it certainly does, in this case there'd only be the one weakness on c7, which white will probably try to pile up against, but that one's a lot easier to defend, and the knights don't have an easy way to get in. So that's probably not what white should do after e5. But after a move like takes, and let's say knight takes, just to get rid of this knight on g6, which has very few prospects otherwise, takes. White still enjoys an advantage in this position because the d5 and f5 squares are very weak, and there's still the c7 weakness. But at least white's not immediately planting a knight on e5. So, okay. In the game, this is how it went. Takes, and now after queen d6, there's the winning tactic for white. So hopefully you guys can solve that one. Feel free to post on chessuniversity.com if you see it. And I will see everybody tomorrow with another puzzle challenge video. Thanks for watching.